All right, Nick. Well, here we are. It's funny. This is how I used to do this with Tony. I'd make videos and kind of tell him I'm just smoking, and then I'm going to sit down, so I won't be moving around the whole time. But this is how Tony and I used to do it. I'd kind of tell him like what I was thinking, and just so you know, the history of the project. When I got out of prison in 2017, when I did my second term for the DUI, non-conviction DUI, I got out. I didn't have a car, I didn't have a house. I was like living with my parents, and I had nothing going for me. I was hating life. I was going to meetings and just trying to do the right thing. And I got arrested for pimping, but I had hit up Tony O'Neill, who had always been one of my favorite novelists, and I asked him if he'd want to collaborate on anything, and he's like, look, I got a half a book done about this cartel down in Juarez, Mexico, and he's like, I got to the halfway point and I got stuck. So he's like, if you can like write the second half, yeah, we can publish it. Now, so I read what he had written, and it was okay, man. It was like, more like, honestly, I know you, and he's a great writer, but you're more artistic, if you know what I mean. You're darker, you're more like, he's a little, and it's funny because he used to be dark as fuck. He just, I don't know, some people get like softer with age, I guess. And so his stuff was great, but it wasn't like, I don't think it meshed well because I think my stuff was so dark. And so I started working on 2017, and I have a bunch of material from back then that I was going to recycle for the second book. But it didn't really end up working out with Tony. I'd paid him money to work on it with me. So he said he had a 9-to-5 that was preventing him from being able to like really sink his teeth into it. I paid him a few grand. I paid for the cover, and I finally got serious about it again in like 2019. And that's when I got the cover, which I love. But Tony just, like last week said that he's like, hey man, I don't know. I'm like depressed. I've rewritten this material so much. I don't want to do it anymore. So with all that being said, and like, I was like, whatever, kind of whack that I paid him. And so he said he'll pay me back. But anyway, with that being said, none of what I'm going to talk about right now has anything to do with him or his characters or his plots or anything. This is all going off my side of it. And I had always envisioned that, like, I want to start doing shorter books, novellas, I guess is what you would call them, between 100 to 200 pages. Wasting Talent is like 236 pages. And what makes a novella is anything that is under 50,000 words. A novel is anything over 50,000 words. That's at least how I've been trained with it, through my self-teachings and shit. So I just think that with the ADD generation and everyone's kind of like addiction to binge watching episodic premium television, I think that the same trend can be done with literature. The episodic novellas used to be a big thing. The last time I remember one being very successful was when Stephen King did The Green Mile, and I think he released it in like 6 or 7 novella books. I read those as they were coming out at the grocery store, and I had always planned on this being a series, right? So Antiheroes is the name of the series, and then each season would have a different name. So because this last one was supposed to take place with the cartels and stuff in Mexico, it was going to be called Antiheroes Juarez. And then each episode would be its own novella. So it was, the first one It's going to be called Antiheroes Juarez, the Ballad of Mickey Fang. Mickey Fang was one of Tony's characters. So scratch all that. Antiheroes, and what I wanted to call the first season, this is just like terms I'm kind of like inventing. It's just, think of it like a television show. And I think because of how well we work together, the fact that you're an actor and the fact that we are writing scripts together, I think there's a really high chance we can get this turned into a television show. I don't know if you remember, but Johnny Depp, just to clarify, Johnny had already said that he'd be down to do like, you know, an audiobook, you know, where we'd actually have real actors reading it. And I think that'd be great eventually to have like a bunch of actors, including yourself, reading this material and like doing like audiobooks with like sound effects and shit. And then maybe eventually it'd be a television show. I want to self-publish it. That's what I did with Wasting Talent. I've hit multiple bestseller lists. You know, it used to be stigmatized to self-publish, but it's not anymore. You know, 50 Shades of Grey was self-published. The Martian, the thing with Matt Damon, that was self-published. A lot of stuff that, you know, has been really successful with self-published, and then we keep complete control. And we don't have to wait. If we go through a publishing house, you know, they give you an advance. It can take 2 years before it comes out. We self-publish it, Nick. We can have this shit out when you come back. When you come back to LA, we can have our first book out together. So I'm going to explain what I think the first season should be, and kind of like the themes, plot, everything. So just kick back, drink your latte or whatever the fuck you're doing, and listen to the magic I'm about to lay down. So when I was a little kid, I remember my dad had a book called Tales from the Wayside Inn. It's funny because I looked up that book today on eBay. That book is worth $3,000. I don't think my dad realizes it. I guess it's like some rare poetry book. But I always liked the name Wayside Inn. Like, I don't know. I guess maybe just nostalgic for my childhood. So I wanted to name the first season, which is, you know, within these first 6 or 7 books. Maybe we'll do like 6 or 7 books, all around 40 or 50,000 words, you know, novellas. And I want it to be Antiheroes Wayside, right? No one's going to know what that means. I think the first book would be The Rise and Fall of Colin McFadden. I'm going to get into all this. Now, Tony's book was more genre fiction, right? It was more like crime fiction. I've always been into transgressive and literary fiction, you know, more metaphors, more subtext, shit like what Bret Easton Ellis writes, or like, I know we both like John Fonte, and we have similar sensibilities when it comes to novels. But, you know, because I write literary fiction, I come up with the themes, right? I always think of like the theme. What are we actually writing about? Now, Tony had never named it Antiheroes. That was all my name. That was my idea. I forget what he had called the book, but it wasn't that. It was like something else. And my idea was to come up with characters that are good guys, but flawed, which we both can relate to. Because I honestly think you and I are both really like big-hearted people that just have some inherent, you know, deficits. We have a disease called alcoholism, and I don't think we're bad people. So, you know, therefore we can expend like a lot of personal, emotional, and creative energy into something like that. So I came up with a batch of characters, and that's what you would need to do. Now, the first character I came up with was named Gunner. Gunner was a guy who, his mom was a prostitute. He grew up getting raped, really just come from like a very violent, sexually abused background, and he gets into meth when he's a teenager. He ends up going to the war, goes to Iraq, and he starts doing meth again out in Iraq. He's out in a bunker, and he gets hit by a missile. Now, because he's smoking meth on the DL, he's in the corner hitting a pookie over a candle. And so everybody gets killed in this bunker except for him. It's a great scene, meth psychosis with like body parts and shit. And that was a flashback sequence. You know, he's going to AA. Now, he's going to AA because, as we find out later in the book, he's impotent. You know, he can't get a boner unless he engages in violence. The war just like fucked him up. So he goes to AA because he's trying not to commit violence anymore. You know, ironically enough, the drug stuff was finished after the incident in Iraq, but his new addiction was beating people up so that he could get sexually aroused, so that he could go have sex with people. I know that sounds creepy, but like, he doesn't want to hurt anybody. So it's kind of like how Dexter only kills bad guys. Like, he uses this is like his superpower, like beating up fucked up people so he can get a boner, and he whatever. So when we first meet Gunner, it goes into this flashback sequence. He's at an AA meeting a woman named Cindy, voluptuous, kind of chubby white girl, and they go back to his place. She's hitting on him. They want to have sex, she wants to have sex, but it's an embarrassment for him because he can't get it up. So sorry. So then it goes into the flashback, and it kind of like explains when he was in the war and why he got like this to begin with. So that's Gunner, right? And he's a good guy. The next character is Colin McFadden. Now, when I was writing this stuff, George Floyd had just been murdered. Black Lives Matter was raging. Police brutality was a big thing. And I was thinking about all the racial undertones and stuff that was happening in the country. And I came up with this capitalistic trust fund piece of shit rapist named Colin McFadden. Colin McFadden had been just a piece of shit racist guy his whole life. And he raped women in college. I go into all this stuff in gory detail. Eventually he marries some woman that he meets at a Republican, dinner. They get married, and he basically inherited this big corporation from his dad. His dad was like very strict, a Reaganite. And I'm so freaked out. I feel like there's stalkers like trying to kill me. Get off drugs, buddy. So he ends up owning this company, marries this woman, has kids. He likes to fuck black prostitutes, right? He loves fucking black prostitutes, humiliating them, degrading them. And he ends up getting a prostitute, and 3 girls come in, or we think they're girls. They're transgender. Now, I had originally written it where they were wearing presidential masks, but I like the Day of the Dead mask. It's the cover of the book, and basically the prostitute's son has become a woman and has this like group of transgender friends, and they go around roofing or date rape, drugging rich men, and then taking photographs where like there's all these like trannies and stuff, and they use it to extort people. And this happens with Colin McFadden. He's like humiliating this black girl. And shit, hold up. I'm really nauseous right now. Anyway, sorry I'm taking so long. These girls, or the transgenders, basically, you know, take pictures with him, and I forget, I like skimmed over this part when I was rereading it, but like something happens where he ends up like beating them up, but they still have like all the photographs of him, and then the police find him, you know, beat up in his car, and he ends up getting arrested for like assault on an officer after this incident. One of the cops is a minority, and he goes on this like racial rant and ends up getting arrested. Now, because he's such like a big titan of industry or whatever, it's like big national news. Now, his wife that he had met at the Republican dinner is dying of cancer. So it's a bad look. Like, while she's dying of cancer, he's out like partying with like transgender women or whatever. So his attorney, this guy Mac, has him start going to AA. Like he's like out on bail. He starts going to AA, and he starts having an affair with the chip lady. He meets a sponsor named Baker. Baker's this like very affluent black guy, you know, they're like highly educated, and they start doing step work together. Now, later, we find out that the girl that McFadden's having an affair with is actually Baker's girlfriend. And Baker isn't some affluent black guy at all. He's some hood brother. And they go around extorting people. So she was trying to extort Gunner, and he's trying to extort McFadden. Like, they basically have this hustle and con where they know that they can like get all sorts of sickos in the rooms, figure out secrets, use it against them. And McFadden's only going to the meetings because of this incident that had happened with the trannies or whatever. Now, we go back to Gunner. It goes like more into like his history, talks more about his mom. She had a very profound influence on his life. And, you know, there's this whole sequence that's basically like his backstory, and some homeless guy's asking him for money. He ends up beating up the dude, and he gets aroused, and he like beats off, like howls into the moonlight or something. I don't know, I was all fucked up when I was reading this the other night. It's like now I'm forgetting stuff. But basically, the point of that is to show that Gunner's a psychopath. Remember, he's a good guy. And I made like Colin McFadden, Baker, these like much more nefarious characters to kind of juxtapose to our anti-heroes. Now, the anti-heroes are Gunner, and it was supposed to be these other characters that Tony had come up with, but we're not using them anymore. So the transgender prostitutes were just going to be peripherals, but I think I'm going to make them their own, you know, give them their own plot lines and stuff. And again, it's like you're rooting for the transgender prostitute, you're rooting for the violent guy that beats up bad people so that he can get so that he can get aroused. You're rooting for the anti-heroes. So the whole reason that this guy Baker is sponsoring McFadden is because they're trying to extort his ass too, just like the trannies were. And the first book was going to end where Baker and Cindy's the chip lady, they show up to McFadden's office, and they basically say they're going to extort him. Remember, his wife's dying of cancer. He just got caught with trannies in a motel. They want $5 million from him, right? And then they're also planning on extorting Gunner. Gunner's mom had taught him that the only two important things are sunglasses and a nice watch. He's got like some $30,000 Rolex, and they're just trying to steal the Rolex from him. You know, basically, that's it. I mean, these are like low-level criminals. But they're trying to get $5 million from McFadden. So that's kind of like where things had ended. There's another character named, a couple named Jolene and Preston. And Jolene, so this is a part that I hadn't written yet, but basically Jolene was dating, it goes into this back. Okay, so Preston's like a computer hacker, Jolene's a hooker, right? And they're like addicted to Opanas, you know, like opioid pain killers. And they're like he's a hacker. They get stuff off the dark web, do stuff with cryptocurrency, and they're basically like, she doesn't want to be a hooker anymore. There's this whole backstory with her. I have this in my mind fresh. It's the chapter that I wanted to write. And basically they start getting these bootleg Viagras off the dark web for like $1.50 a pill. They can sell them for $10 a pill. And they start selling them at like golf courses, and they're like, basically like, she's fucking these old men, but they're trying to get out of it because Preston loves his girlfriend and he doesn't want her sleeping with dudes anymore. So they start doing this Viagra hustle on the dark web, and they end up getting burned for $75,000. That's how their arc is going to end in the first book, right? What I was going to have happen is Baker decides, or, McFadden calls his attorney, says that Baker, he's getting extorted for $5 million, or they're gonna reveal this affair that he had with Cindy, with the chip lady. And his attorney's like, let's give him $5 million cash, but like, let's put it in, and they also want a car. You know, Baker wants like a Cadillac CTS, $5 million and a Cadillac CTS, right? So they're going to give him what he wants. It has to be a clean car, but they're going to put a tracking device in the car, right? And then there's going to be these rough guys out of Texas, and I was thinking maybe these could be a couple of your characters. They have these like enforcers that work for McFadden, like these like rough collector guys, and they're going to give this Baker, the black sponsor, the CTS with $5 million cash in the trunk, but they're going to have a GPS in it. So they want him to think he got away, and then these collectors are going to literally go kill him and get the money back. That's the plan. Well, so this would all happen in the first book, right? Jolene and Preston, her real name is Sasha. Jolene's like her prostitute name after the Dolly, what is it? Dolly Part, whatever her name is. Sorry, it's like 5 a.m. So they go and Baker gets the $5 million cash, Cadillac CTS. Now they're so greedy. They're so fucking greedy that they want to go get this watch from Gunner, you know? Baker's just like a sociopath. Like, he gets off on just robbing people. And, you know, they're like leaving town after they extort Colin McFadden for the $5 million. And they go to Gunner's house. They both show up there. And Baker's like somehow like trying to get the watch. I haven't figured any of the stuff out yet, but Gunner ends up killing Baker, right? He ends up killing Baker, but not Cindy. He kills Baker, and then him and Cindy end up fucking, right? And Gunner runs out and takes their car, the Cadillac CTS with the $5 million cash in it, and he leaves. Now, he ends up, because now he just killed someone, he ends up going down to Mexico, to Tijuana. And these enforcers think that that Gunner is Baker. They don't realize that Baker's been killed. So now they're after Gunner in this car, right? And or something like that. This is just stuff I'm trying to figure out. Anyway, this is getting like way too ahead of myself. What I'm thinking is that they go down to Mexico for a little bit, and Sasha and Preston, Jolene, they got burned for $75,000. Again, you could come up with characters that burn them for the $75,000. And like they're used to meeting them like in Texas, right by the border, so they're like trying to find them down in Mexico. Like they have a pretty good idea where the person is that burned them, and that wasn't their $75,000. I was gonna have that come from like some bikers, or like some, maybe not bikers, but some like crazy motherfuckers that have money. Maybe you could come up with those people. Anyway, this would all be in the second book. They, Sasha and Preston are down in a hotel down there, and I was gonna make this thing where Gunner's trying to have sex with a prostitute down there, but she's like 300 pounds. It's the only hooker he can find down there, and he gives her a line of blow and she dies. And so now he's got this 300-pound chick in his motel room in Mexico after he's already killed someone. He doesn't even know there's $5 million in the car. And he basically runs into Sasha and Preston. Remember, Sasha's Jolene, that's just her name. And they like help him get rid of the body somehow. They team up. So now Gunner, Sasha, Preston are down in Mexico. Now the trannies, McFadden had killed their mom. I don't know if I'd mentioned that. So the trannies are after McFadden. McFadden is sending his thugs after Baker, but Gunner has Baker's car. You following me? And somehow I want them all, like they go down to Mexico, but then they have to come back to California, and they go up to Lake Arrowhead, and they're all staying in this like crazy desolate hotel by this lake called the Wayside Inn. Very atmospheric. It's like winter time. This is like in the second or third book. But what this is all leading up to, Sasha and Preston are trying to get the person that burned them, because there's people after them. Gunner doesn't even know, but there's these McFadden's thugs are after them. Then trannies are after McFadden. So it just becomes like this crazy ass plot. And I was thinking there could be this character that's like in a wheelchair, and he's like a chemist, and he's like synthesizing drugs and shit, like fentanyl, but like he's been trying to get the funding because he thinks he can make these chips that you implant in people, and you stay high forever on whatever drug it is. If it's meth, you stay on meth forever at like a regulated dose. If it's heroin, the same thing. But there's like, he wants to be able to like control people with this stuff too. And they're up at this, he's up at the Wayside Inn as well, somehow, right? I want to get them all up at this Wayside Inn. And these chips would be about like control, big farm, disease, higher power, You know, essentially they can remotely control these drug addicts, not in like a silly like robotic way, but like they can literally turn off their high, or they can change it, or they can track people that way. And it's all about capitalism, and it's all about the underdogs winning, you know. And I wanted to make Sasha, the prostitute Jolene, I wanted to make her like a bad character, or maybe Preston the bad character, so there'll be like betrayal. This is the kind of stuff that I'd like to do. Now, I'd like to come out with, I hope I explained it right. It's like super early. I'm tired. I'm fucking not, I'm high and life sucks right now. But, you know, I'm certainly going to try to do what I can to get right. And this really gives me a lot of hope. Like I said, it took me 2 weeks to write, I think 15 or 20,000 words. I could do the Sasha and Preston story next. You know, remember, McFadden has these thugs that work for him. You know, the crazy chemist that for some reason I see in a wheelchair. You know, Gunner's mom could be a character. You know, there's other little like peripherals that we can, expand on, or you can bring your own people to the table. And I'm telling you, Nick, we could be done with this. That cover that I already have, it can be changed to what we want, but I wanted it to be the first one, Antiheroes, Wayside, The Rise and Fall of Colin McFadden. That's book 1, is what I think. Unless you can think of something better, I'm open to all ideas. But like there'll be like 6 or 7 of these books, right? I sold 300,000 copies of Wasting Talent. Like, I know you're not in it for the money. Need money right now. I need to fucking get out of the profession I'm in, and we can publish this shit. Like, by the time you're back, we could even do some like live readings and shit. I just think it would be really cool we work well together. I think we could do this. I want to do 6 or 7 of these novellas, and then we release each one individually. You know, we can do the audiobooks, but then when like the whole season is done, we're not going to call it a season. That's just like verbiage for ourselves. But as soon as Wayside season is finished, we release it in one big volume, like a 1,200 page book. And we can even like include some like bonus material, like shit that we cut out, you know, so that there's an incentive for people to buy that one too. But I think that just the whole premise of underdogs taking on like big entities, I don't want it to get too like out there, but imagine if like they're experimenting on people in this Wayside Inn, and maybe, you know, Sasha and Preston, because he's a hacker, maybe he figured out how, like, you know, where these people are, and they're up at this hotel called the Wayside Inn, which is like a real sketchy hotel up in Lake Arrowhead above Los Angeles, where like, you know, kind of motel or hotel, like kind of resort, not resorts, just like cabins called the Wayside Inn. It's like snowing, it's winter, kind of place where nobody asks questions. But we could have this shit done by the time you're back, no doubt. And I'm very confident that I can teach you some things about prose. You're already a good writer, but as long as you're as open-minded as you were when we worked on Florida together, I think that we can do this, and I think it's just dope. I mean, we'll have a fucking book out, you know, and then, you know, what's cool about doing it in a series is if we don't want to keep doing it after the first book, we don't have to. But if it becomes really popular, you know, it could be really fun, man. To work on Antiheroes the rest of our lives, you know, different seasons. It could eventually be turned into a television show. We can get big name blurbs. You know, I'm sure you can get some crazy ass big name blurbs. You know, we can get Johnny Depp. You know, Mel Gibson, Bret Easton Ellis, Irvine Welsh, Chuck Palahniuk, J.T. Leroy, Eli Roth, Dave Navarro, Tommy Lee, blah, 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 blah. I can get us, you know, a lot of press, and then we can do these audiobooks. I just think that it's really going to help us with, like, film, and it's, like, I love reading books, man, and there's some bullshit out there right now. I'm down to, like, put some fucking gas, dog. Hey, I want to put some fucking fire out in the universe, fool, where everyone's going to be wanting to touch our wiener and butt fuck, all that shit, fool. It's going to be fucking femie, dog. Fucking palabra. Yeah, let me know, bro. I'm tired. I am tired as a motherfucker. I hope that, you know, my outline wasn't too meandering, and I hope that you see my vision. Underdogs taking on a bigger entity. There's some classic shit in there. Read what I wrote. It's 85 pages. Watch the cut for my documentary. Remember when you'd send stuff out to people and you get mad when they didn't watch? I know you're busy as fuck out there. I'm just giving you a hard time. But the reading Antiheroes is much more important to me than you watching the doc. I haven't even watched it yet, so I'm too depressed. I'm a bitch. I'm a piece of shit, so what? I knew I was a bitch. I did it anyway. So what? All right, bro. Bye.